Welcome everyone again, and big welcome to Debbie. And thank you, Debbie, for joining us. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for accepting the invitation to join us in this live talk.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
First of all, I would love to say a few things about you, and maybe then you can add if I forgot something. You are the founder of Tilt Parenting. Every one of you can check out the website. It's tiltparenting.com. Now I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And you are a certified positive discipline trainer. You are a best-selling author, speaker. You are the host of Tilt Parenting podcast, which has already over 6 million downloads. One of your books is called Differently Wired: Raising an Exceptional Child in a Conventional World. You were featured in Psychology Today. You spoke at TEDx Talk in Amsterdam, and you live in Brooklyn, in New York, with your family. Is that still all correct, or do I need to change something?
That is correct, although our family is moving back to Amsterdam in 2 months. So
Welcome
there's
back.
a lot of moving pieces in my home right now, but thank you. We're very excited.
Perfect. Do you want to add something? Did I forget something?
I'm the parent of a 19-year-old child who's starting university, and I think that's about it. I've had many different careers in the past, but this is the work I'm doing right now. Supporting families and parents is definitely my most meaningful and fulfilling work that I've done.
Thank you. Perfect. If anyone has any questions, please share them in the chat. After the first few initial questions, we will be checking the chat, and I will be asking Debbie the questions that you are going to write. Feel free to start typing your questions whenever something comes to your mind. Debbie, today we are supposed to talk about managing our own energy and emotional resources. My first question is, why did you choose this topic for this live talk?
Well, I think this is such a critical piece of parenting, is being aware of our own energy and how that can impact and influence the dynamic that we have with our child. And it's such a powerful tool. And of course, there's so many strategies to support kids with meltdowns and all of these things. But if we're not a regulated human being, none of those strategies are going to work. And so many parents that I hear from are just tapped out. They're exhausted, they're depleted, and we often put ourselves last. And so I really like the idea of remembering that actually in this equation, we matter the most if we want to show up as best we can for our kids and for our families and for ourselves.
What do you think are some of the examples, of types of things that deplete our energy on regular basis in the parenting life?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many things. Even what first comes to mind are those routines that we often have getting out the door. Something we have to do every day sometimes can really drain our reserves if it's a battle or if we find ourselves in these cycles of reminding and we're running late and we kind of all go through these stressful moments together. So those regular routines. We also have, if we have a child who's struggling and is dysregulated, being the recipient of that big energy can be really hard and can take a toll, because often we're working so hard to not react or respond, and it just gets kind of bottled up more and more inside. And often we're kind of the first place or the safe place for our kids to let it rip and to really kind of vent to us. And so that can be a big drainer. And then I have so many, but I'll just add one more and then we can keep going if you want. But I think just the world that we live in and the demands and expectations on what being a good parent looks like, or what having a compliant or good child looks like, And then we see reminders on social media and all of these places around us about what a happy family looks like. And if we feel that doesn't reflect our reality, and we can start to feel like we're failing at this, that can really also deplete our reserves and make us feel like, overwhelmed, and we don't know what we're doing. And that just can become a real negative thought loop.
And when I am thinking about each one of us, how can I, as a parent, try to identify what are my own unique energy drains?
Yeah, I mean, my hunch is that everyone who's watching this call, like even just with what I've said, has some things that have popped up for them. I mean, I think anytime that we are feeling the big uncomfortable feelings, frustration, annoyance, embarrassment, shame, jealousy, those kind of bigger emotions that just don't sit right in our bodies and they don't feel well. To me, those are signals that there's some stuff happening that is really pulling away from our emotional well-being. And so I think noticing that and realizing, oh, there's that feeling again. How can I pay attention to this and get curious about what's going on? That's one thing we can do. And then another really important thing is, like, our bodies are such wonderful vessels of information for us if we're willing to pay attention, or not willing, if we're able to tune in. And I don't know if you guys have found this, but I think so many of us as adults are can be cut off from our bodies. We're just so busy doing all of the other things. A lot of us don't have the bandwidth to sit down and like check in. How am I feeling right now? Where is there tension? What's happening in my system right now? And so we just, we forge ahead. And I'm really good at this. I don't stop moving. I will fix things. I get really activated. I go for walks and I'm always kind of moving, and I forget to slow down and find out, oh, what is actually happening in my body. So getting more attuned with our body can be a really wonderful strategy to get to know, where am I, right now, what's going on, and then we can learn to pay more attention to that.
And when you're talking about the body, what is the role of the body in doing this recognition work? What are the other roles that you can think of?
Yeah, and actually, I just want to also say this because I just interviewed someone for my podcast about interoception, which, if you're not familiar with interoception, that is the body's ability to kind of understand what's happening inside of it. And so, especially for neurodivergent people and for a lot of neurodivergent kids, their interoception isn't as well developed. So I just want to say that this can be challenging. And so it can be also a part of one's neurodivergent wiring that makes it harder for them to tune in to what's happening in their body. But it's something that we can learn how to do. And I think, doing kind of a check-in, we can start to just notice, a body scan head to toe slowly, just see, like, am I tight somewhere? Am I, is my jaw clenched? Am I keeping energy here? Do I feel kind of heavy, in my heart or in my gut? And um, so starting to just ask your body every day, what information do you have for me? And then if we notice, oh, there's a heaviness there, then we can get curious. I wonder what that's about. Like, what is my body trying to tell me? And then we can start to just have that like inquiry mind, and start to get curious. And not that we'll instantly have the answer, but just starting to pay attention to those things and going through our day with this curiosity mindset, we can start to make connections like, actually, this is really bothering me right now, or I'm feeling stuck around this. I wonder, and then we can, once we identify that, we can pivot and start to focus on that.
Mhm. Do you have some more tricks if we are disconnected and if we are having hard time, to connect with our bodies? How can we become more attuned.
Yeah. I mean, it is
Especially when we are depleted, like when we don't have the energy, when we are running from place to place, it
Mhm.
gets much, much harder.
Yeah, it really does. I will share with you again. I mentioned that I like to move, and actually, I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete since I was a young child. I'm in my 50s now. I still consider myself an athlete, but I'm very active. And so I'm really in tune with when I have a hip injury, or, if something's going on that's impacting my running or something. But the other part, the internal experience, has been really hard for me. And, my therapist suggested, why don't you start doing restore yoga? So, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that with yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. And she's like, no, you need to go to a class. You need to do this in person. And so I started doing that once a week with a lovely instructor. And even that 90 minutes once a week has been so restorative for me, because there's no distractions, and it gives me an opportunity to kind of be in these still poses and really just focus on what's going on. So I'm really working on building up that muscle, but it does take, I would say, intention. So you can do this body scan when you're laying in bed in the morning and just practice it. You might not feel anything. You might do it head to toe and be like, nope, nothing. And that's okay. Try it again the next day. You can get kind of in tune with your sensory experience, right? So, as a mindfulness practice, I was just going to Prospect Park this weekend. It was a perfect spring day, which we haven't had a lot up here. And I went for a walk and I sat down on the grass. I stopped. That was the first thing. Normally I'm just walking. I was like, I'm going to sit. And I just sat back on the grass. I felt the sun. I really just tried to focus on, what do I feel on my skin? How does the breeze feel? What's the temperature like? How does the sun feel? And my hair got really warm. So I was trying to practice noticing what my body was experiencing. So taking time to do that will start to help us better be in tune with that part of ourselves.
Um, why do you think it's important that parents have some kind of strategies to manage their energy and build up their emotional reserve?
Yeah. I would say it's absolutely crucial to parent. If we're going to parent our kids effectively, we have got to be paying attention to ourselves. And, I talk with parents a lot about self-care. I'm sure that's stuff that you all have talked about in your community as well. And it is a complicated topic to bring up with people, because it can feel really, to some people, self-indulgent, or I shouldn't be prioritizing myself. I should put all my energy towards my child. But really, if we are not a regulated human being, we are just not going to be able to be that non-anxious presence for our kids. We're not going to be able to be steady when the flare-ups happen. We're not going to be able to thoughtfully respond in the moment when something happens. We're going to react, right? And I think of someone showed me this visual when talking about our stress tolerance and our nervous system's ability to tolerate stress. And if you think about a glass that's full of water, or a glass of water, some of us are operating with that water right at the lip line, and just takes the littlest thing, it's all going to spill out. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're going to be that way. So the littlest thing, and especially, I don't know the age of everyone here, but I will say, having just experienced the joys of perimenopause, that absolutely impacted my ability to tolerate stress. I was always operating up here. And so the littlest things would push me over the edge. And the same thing's happening with our kids, right? So we can then feed off of each other. And so what we want to do is bring the level of the water to about halfway full. We have room to go up, we have room to go down. We want our nervous systems to be more flexible and adaptable. Again, that's what we want for our kids ultimately, but we can't show up with that flexibility if we're just drained, if we have no capacity for anything else.
What can we do as parents about the things that drain our energy but that are somehow required? You know, you mentioned the things that in the morning we have to get out of the house. You know, we cannot
Mhm.
avoid really these things and very often stressful situations.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. And well, I'm going to share one strategy or one kind of like framework that I've used, and then I have a couple other ideas. But um, when I became a life coach, Dr. Martha Backus, who I studied with, and she shared this concept called the 4 Bs. And the 4 Bs are just a way to approach anything that is an undesirable task. And so the first B is to bag it. So I would always say, if you can bag something, get rid of it. Like if you can take it off your plate, take it off your plate. The second is to barter it. And that is, are there ways that, could somebody else do this part? So if, say it's getting out the door and you've got 2 kids, can one of the siblings help get the shoes on? So, and maybe you're like, I'll make your lunch, you get the shoes. So you're kind of bartering an arrangement, whatever that looks like. The third B is to batch it. And that just means if there are tasks, there are a lot of things going on, do them all at once together. So you're kind of getting it over with. And then the fourth is to better it. And so if it is a task that you have to do, how can we make it more enjoyable? Do we put on some fun music and make it a game? Let's try to get out of the house before the end of this song. You choose the song tomorrow or whatever. Is there a way to make it more fun? Make it a game, make it more enjoyable. So the 4 Bs can be just a nice thing to pull out of your back pocket if you have something to do. I also invite people to lower the bar. And, this is something I learned from Dr. Michelle Borba, who is a resiliency expert on kids. And this is what she would tell me all the time, especially during the pandemic. She'd say, Debbie, we all need to just lower the bar. We have these expectations for what this should look like and that we should do this flawlessly and our kids should be this way and it shouldn't feel so hard. And we put so much pressure on ourselves. And so lowering the bar and being like, you know what, this is going to be messy and that's okay. We don't have to look like the perfect family. And maybe my kid's going to have 2 different shoes and 2 different pairs of socks on. That's okay. I'm just going to lower the bar and be okay with what this looks like. So finding ways, and then also I think adjusting our own expectations, because what I have found in my community is that often the most stress and frustration comes from scenarios where we have this idea, this vision, what it should look like, or this expectation of how easy the morning should be. And then we have the reality of what's actually happening. And so, but we're clinging to this picture of what we think it should look like. And then, but here's what's going on. And so if we can acknowledge the gap between those 2 things and be like, okay, this is where we are right now, and try to find peace and acceptance. It doesn't mean we don't work on those things, but we lower our own expectations and we just kind of embrace, or we stop arguing with reality, because the reality is right now, I keep using this example of getting out the door, but I hope it's resonating, but it's messy right now. And that's where we are. There are a lot of skills that my kids don't have yet. We're working on them and we're going to just take this one day at a time. So that can be really helpful because it will reframe and shift our energy around those activities.